the meal that ended a culinary era. No announcement marked the shift. No headline declared the end. It happened quietly over a single meal. This story matters now because eras rarely end when we expect them to. They fade not through collapse, but through realization. In food, as in culture, we often continue long after something has stopped serving us. To understand how one meal ended a culinary era, we need to return to a dining room where perfection finally felt empty. Because today, the same patterns linger long after their purpose has passed. For years, this style of dining defined excellence. Long tasting menus, endless courses, technical mastery displayed with precision. Meals stretched for hours, testing endurance as much as palate. To finish the menu was to prove seriousness. Chefs competed quietly through excess. More techniques, more components, more explanations. Complexity became synonymous with value. Diners learned to admire effort, even when pleasure receded. Then came the meal that changed everything. It was executed flawlessly. Every course landed exactly as intended. The pacing was perfect, the technique unquestionable. There was nothing to critique. And yet, something felt wrong. Guests reached the final course not exhilarated, but tired. Conversations had thinned. Attention drifted. What should have felt triumphant felt burdensome. The meal had demanded too much. The chef noticed it immediately, not in complaints, but in silence. Plates returned clean, but without enthusiasm. Praise sounded polite, not alive. The kitchen had delivered mastery, but lost connection. That night forced an uncomfortable realization. The era had been built on accumulation, on proving greatness through quantity. But diners were no longer hungry for proof. They wanted meaning. They wanted restraint. They wanted to leave feeling lighter, not conquered. That single meal did not fail. It succeeded too perfectly. And in doing so, it revealed that the era it represented had reached its natural end. What followed would reshape how chefs thought about ambition itself. In the days that followed, the realization spread quietly. No one announced a change. No manifesto was written. But conversations shifted in kitchens and dining rooms alike. Chefs who had built careers on endurance menus began questioning their own habits. Not publicly, privately. They noticed diners leaving earlier. They noticed excitement peak halfway through the meal, then flatten. The problem was not quality. It was saturation. Diners spoke differently, too. They still respected the craft. But their praise sounded conditional. Incredible, but exhausting. Impressive, but heavy. The language betrayed a growing distance between admiration and enjoyment. Inside the kitchen where that meal was served, the shift was immediate and painful. The chef reviewed the menu and saw something new. Not creativity, but obligation. Courses existed because tradition demanded them, not because they added meaning. Removing dishes felt dangerous. Fewer courses meant less justification for price, prestige, and reputation. For years, abundance had protected status. Restraint felt like vulnerability. Still, the chef experimented quietly. A shortened menu one night, fewer transitions, longer pauses. The result was subtle, but undeniable. Guests leaned in again. Conversations revived. Plates returned with energy, not just cleanliness. Word traveled slowly. Other chefs tried similar adjustments. One course disappeared here. Two there. Tasting menus began to breathe. The era did not end in revolt. It ended through attrition, through small decisions repeated across kitchens, guided by the same realization. More was no longer impressive. More was simply more. And the future was asking for something different. As restraint spread, resistance followed. Critics accused chefs of lowering ambition. Diners worried they were paying the same for less. The language of reduction felt like loss, not evolution. But inside kitchens, something else was happening. Chefs felt relief. Fewer courses meant more attention. Less performance meant more care. Cooking regained intimacy. Menus became intentional again. Every dish had to earn its place. There was nowhere to hide filler. No course existed to bridge concepts or pad length. Each plate carried weight. The shift exposed weaknesses brutally. Some restaurants collapsed when excess was removed. Without spectacle, there was nothing underneath. Others revealed strength. Simplicity amplified their voice. Diners adjusted gradually. They stopped measuring value by duration. They noticed how they felt afterward. Lighter, clearer, more present. The meal no longer dominated the evening. It complemented it. The most telling change was emotional. Chefs stopped chasing endurance as proof of seriousness. Ambition redirected inward, toward clarity, toward balance, toward honesty. The old era had equated greatness with difficulty, both for the cook and the guest. Suffering had been reframed as virtue. That idea began dissolving. The realization was uncomfortable, but freeing. Excellence did not require exhaustion. And with that understanding settling in, the story moved toward its final resolution. The resolution did not arrive with consensus. It arrived with relief. Chefs and diners alike recognized the shift not as loss, but as release. Menus across the world grew shorter, but sharper. Courses spoke clearly instead of competing. Techniques served flavor again, not ego. Meals ended with energy instead of fatigue. The era that ended was not defined by ambition alone. It was defined by excess mistaken for depth, by endurance mistaken for meaning, by the belief that greatness must overwhelm. What replaced it was quieter, more human, a dining experience that respected attention instead of consuming it, a table that invited conversation rather than demanding silence. The meal that ended the era is rarely remembered by name, and that is fitting. It was not a spectacle. It was a realization. Today, as new movements rise and fall, this story offers a lasting reminder. Progress is not always about pushing further. Sometimes it is about stopping sooner. Because when something no longer feels nourishing, no amount of mastery can save it. And the moment we recognize that truth, a new era quietly begins. What the meal that ended an era also revealed is something about how excellence can become its own obstacle. The tasting menu culture that peaked in that dining room had produced genuinely extraordinary food. The techniques were real. The discipline was real. The ambition was real. None of that was false. What was false was a framing that equated that excellence with what guests most needed. A meal is not a performance of excellence. It is an exchange between the energy the kitchen puts into a plate and the attention the diner brings to it. That exchange only works when both sides are giving and receiving in comparable proportion. When the kitchen gives more than the diner can receive, the exchange collapses, not into failure, exactly, into a kind of unconsummated brilliance. The food arrived, the technique was visible, the ambition was legible. But by the 14th course, the diner's capacity for genuine attention was exhausted. And food without genuine attention from the person eating it is, in an important sense, food wasted. The chef understood this, not as a technical failure, but as a fundamental misunderstanding of what the exchange of a meal actually is. It is not about maximizing what the kitchen can produce. It is about maximizing what the kitchen and the diner can create together. That together requires calibration, an understanding of how much a human being can actually receive in one sitting. How long genuine pleasure can sustain itself before it becomes performance of pleasure. When hunger tips into fullness and fullness tips into the desire to be somewhere else. Those thresholds are not the same for every person, but they exist for everyone. And an era that had trained itself to ignore them had been optimizing for the wrong thing. The shift that followed the meal that ended the era was not a rejection of ambition. It was a redirection of it. The ambition to produce the most technically impressive meal possible gave way to the ambition to produce the meal that would be most deeply received. And those ambitions, it turned out, were not always aligned. The most deeply received meal is often simpler, shorter, more attuned to the actual state of the person at the table, more honest about what the human appetite is for, not just flavor and technique, but ease, pleasure without effort. The specific satisfaction of having been fed genuinely and completely without having had to work for it. That satisfaction is what the era at its zenith had inadvertently made harder to achieve, and what the generation that followed, chastened by that single evening, began to build back in, not through lesser ambition, through better understanding of what the ambition was actually for, so that progress next time would move not just further, but deeper, toward the people sitting at the table. and what they actually needed that night in that room from the hands that fed them. The